Let's see what's going on over here.
Defendant Shane Fenton. So I need to give you a massive flashing red warning here. What I'm about to say is quite disturbing. There's a lot of like uncomfortable language. And if you are triggered or upset by sex assaults and violent assaults, etc., then this is definitely not the show for you tonight. The accuser is named Ashley Parham, and she has agreed to allow her name to be made public. Let's be real clear about that. She is going public with her name. She says that in February of 2018, she met a man named Shane Pierce at a bar, and that Shane FaceTimed Diddy outside on the sidewalk, apparently trying to impress her. But Ashley Parham says that she told both Shane and Diddy on FaceTime that she wasn't impressed. And this is important. She says she believed that Diddy had something to do with the murder of Tupac Shakur and said as much. Allegedly, Diddy warned her that she would pay for saying something like that. So let's just fast forward now to a month later, where she says this guy Shane invited her to come to his apartment. And the lawsuit says, quote, plaintiff and defendant Shane then began to watch a movie, and defendant Shane offered her a glass of water, which he retrieved and brought back to the plaintiff. A few minutes later, Ashley Parham says that P. Diddy showed up with an entourage, including his top aide, Christina Coram, an unnamed woman who is not a defendant in the suit, and 3 unnamed men, one of whom she says was Diddy's driver, and Parham says that that driver waited outside throughout the whole of what I'm about to tell you. Parham says that Diddy was antagonistic from the start, and that he put a knife to her face. And now this is where I start reading directly from the complaint. Defendant Shane then partially undressed plaintiff, and then defendant Diddy removed the remainder of plaintiff's clothing, removing the knife from her face, and then retrieved a bottle of liquid from a large fanny pack. Defendant Diddy then squirted a bottle of liquid on plaintiff, which placed her in fear that she was being squirted with a chemical substance like acid. Plaintiff soon realized the substance was an oil/lubricant. Plaintiff was squirted with this liquid substance all over the entirety of her naked body. Defendant KK was then told by defendant Diddy to insert what looked like a syringe from sterile packaging into plaintiff's vagina. Defendant KK did as told, and then told defendant Diddy that she was unable to use the IUD because it had prematurely been released from its packaging. An IUD is a birth control device. Defendant Diddy, upset by this, took the so-called syringe from defendant KK and tried inserting it into plaintiff's vagina instead. Defendant KK and Diddy began to argue as defendant KK continued to advise defendant Diddy that since the IUD had been prematurely released from its packaging, there was no way they could insert it into plaintiff's vagina effectively. After some time, defendant Diddy heeded the advice of defendant KK and removed the syringe from plaintiff's vagina and handed it to defendant KK. Defendants KK and Jane Doe then exited defendant Shane's residence, leaving the plaintiff alone with defendants Diddy, Shane, and Doe's number 1 and 2. Defendant Diddy then picked up a television remote that was near to plaintiff and violently inserted it into plaintiff's vagina. Defendant Diddy, while violently raping plaintiff with a television remote, told plaintiff that her life was in his hands and that if he wanted, he could, quote, take her and she would never be seen again. Plaintiff began hysterically crying from the threats by Diddy, along with the pain of being violently, vaginally raped by defendant Diddy with the television remote, as well as the lingering pain from the ordeal with the IUD syringe insertion. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to turn plaintiff on her stomach, seemingly tired of hearing plaintiff's blood-curdling cries. Defendant Shane then grabbed plaintiff by her abdomen and hips and turned plaintiff on her stomach. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to put a pillow over her head because he didn't want to see her face or hear her cries, and instructed defendant Shane to anally rape plaintiff. Defendant Shane did as he was told by defendant Diddy and began to anally rape plaintiff. Defendant Diddy then violently raped plaintiff anally after defendant Shane.
Anticipated.
Defendant Doe number 2 then joined defendants Diddy and Shane, taking a turn annually raping plaintiff. Immediately after defendant number 2 raped plaintiff, he exited defendant Shane's.
That was a lot. It was a lot, but oh baby, reasoning. It's just like in the midst of all of that, we still have stuff like this going on. Good God, where did these hiccups come from?
Foreign in origin, sent by adversary. Breaking news. It's now confirmed. The drones originated from our oceans. Last Thursday, a sheriff from Ocean County, New Jersey, reported to state police, the FBI, and the U.S. Coast Guard that she witnessed 50 drones flying from the ocean toward the mainland. The flight path crossed the navigational channel at Island Beach State Park. The sheriff, a sworn officer, is considered a highly credible witness. In response, the Ocean County Sheriff's Office immediately deployed its own industrial-grade drone to track one of the 50 drones reportedly emerging from the sea. However, what happened next was unusual. The mysterious drones emitted no heat signature, unlike typical drones, and quickly evaded pursuit. Later, Coast Guard officials reported that 13 drones, each with an 8-foot wingspan, had tailed one of their vessels. These SUV-sized, unidentified flying objects have been hovering over New Jersey skies since November 18th, causing growing alarm among local residents. Explanations for these drones vary. Some speculate they could be foreign in origin, sent by adversary. However, last Friday, both the White House and the Pentagon dismissed this theory, stating there was nothing to worry about and suggesting people might be overreacting. Yet, the confirmation that these drones originated from the sea has gone unanswered by the federal government.
It's crazy. All this stuff coming from TikTok, and TikTok really maybe no more soon.
About like 130 something personnel. Hey friends, let's do another daily UFO drone update. This might actually end up being my final UFO drone update because I have a at least preliminary conclusion of what is going on with these drones and UFOs. Okay, so there's this paper that came out from the Air Force from 1965 that I'll put it on my Twitter, on my X, so you can see it in full and read it. But it basically describes a 3-night period where at this Minuteman, nuclear missile silo in Wyoming. If you didn't know, most of our nuclear weapons are kept in the Midwest of our country. That way, if Russia or somebody was to attack them, there would be the least amount of casualties. Just that's why we did it. So we have a crap ton of nuclear weapons in the Midwest, Wyoming, that area of the country. So they can see for miles and miles and miles. This is back in 1965. The sky, there's no drones or satellites or anything like that, or not very many. And they can see forever, clear nights. And for 3 nights in a row, they had all of these UFOs buzzing to the point where they actually did this like comprehensive report on it. And there was like 150 something sightings by like 130 something personnel. These are trained people that their entire job is to monitor from these lookout towers and make sure nothing's messing with the nuclear weapons, right? So these guys are professionals at what they do. And they reported seeing practically the exact same thing that we're seeing in our skies now. This is 60 years ago, okay? So they report seeing sometimes just a ball of light. Sometimes there's flashing lights on it. They said sometimes it looks like there's a tail, like from an airplane. Sometimes not. Sometimes one would split into 2. Sometimes they would like shoot across the sky and then stop on a dime and hover there. They said sometimes they would hover for hours and hours. And here's where it gets really crazy. So this current drone situation, almost all of the sightings happen at basically when the sun goes down, and they go until about midnight, right? So about 5 or 6 o'clock till about midnight. That's when the vast majority of the sightings are. Hardly ever during the day and hardly ever overnight, right? They want to be seen, okay? That's the big thing. So they even say in this report from 1965, the same thing happened. At dusk until about midnight is when the vast majority of these sightings happen. So these things want to be seen. They want to appear like airplanes and stuff, but they also want to appear mysterious. They're sending a message, okay? So this was happening around our Air Force bases and nuclear bases. This has happened for a very long time. There's been several books written on these mysterious objects around our nuclear weapons. So this is not new. And these things that we're seeing right now in the sky are not drones, okay? There are some drones up there, of course. Like we're putting our drones up there to take a look at these things. And most of the accounts are when we get our drones near them, our drones either fall out of the sky or they completely like short circuit. So there's something mysterious happening here. So then it leads us to, okay, who's doing this and why, all right? So these things started picking up in this current flap right after the election. And from the best of what I can tell from assembling all the data is that as soon as Trump was elected next president, the Biden administration was going to do something stupid to try to sabotage basically his transition. Okay. And the reports are suggesting that we were going to launch some sort of preemptive strikes. We're trying to bait Russia into doing something stupid so we could retaliate. If you think about it, these drone things first happened over all of the Air Force bases in the UK, and several of those bases have been reported to have US nuclear weapons out. Okay, so they started there, basically kiboshing that, saying, hey, don't play with these toys. Then they moved over to America, and now they've been seen at Langley, at Wright-Patterson, all over New Jersey, where we have the Picatinny Arsenal. They've been seen over the Capitol. They've been seen all over the place. They're sending a very clear message, not to us as the regular Joes, but to our government, our military, that, hey, big boys are here, put down your weapons, don't do anything stupid. So I look at it this way, whenever we try to trace back who's doing this, okay, you got to look at that we are in what I call the simulator, okay? We're in a virtual reality-like simulator for consciousness development. And just like when you play a virtual reality game, when you're totally locked in that VR game, you lose focus and awareness of everything else out there. And say somebody that you know is playing a VR game and they're in it. They've been playing it for 8 hours straight. They are totally immersed. And you needed to get their attention. You couldn't just go and tap them on the shoulder. They would freak out. They'd be like, ah, you know, it would scare them, right? So if you had the ability, this is what you would do. You would put a message in the game itself, right? In the virtual reality game, you would get their attention that way and say, hey, wake up, you know, I need your attention out here. And then they would see that and they would say, oh, okay, and take the headset off, right? Well, when I see what's happening here, I think about it as like, say you had two cats fighting and you use like one of those laser pointers and you do the little laser pointer to distract them. And then they start chasing the laser pointer and they stop fighting each other. That's what I see happening here. I think that somebody outside of this simulator, right, a higher dimensional being is watching, guiding, monitoring. It's a free will simulator, so we can kind of do whatever we want in here to a certain extent. So kind of like if you had a couple cats fight, it's all good. But if you walked in, you heard the cats just screaming and freaking out, and you came in and they had their claws stuck in each other and they're like, you know, tearing each other to shreds. Even though you know cats fight, you would say, hey, you get the little laser pointer out, you would distract them, they start chasing the dot and they stop fighting. That's what you would do. So cats have free will, they can run around my house and they can be cats, but once they start like hurting each other, I intervene. I think that's what's happening here. A higher dimensional, higher intelligent entity is intervening in us. I think that as soon as Trump got elected, the current administration was going to do something stupid to kibosh this whole thing. And these higher dimensional beings said no. And they started buzzing around and interacting and interfering and distracting and basically sending a message that, hey, you're not the alpha here. We are, you know, so y'all have free will in the simulator, but don't destroy the place. Okay. And that's what I think is happening. When this happened back in 1965, it wasn't the first time. And that was around the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was during the Cold War. There was during the Vietnam War. There was a lot of crazy things going on at that time. And these things have been seen all through history, especially at nuclear bases and especially at Air Force bases. So there's something out there that just wants to continuously remind us that, hey, y'all have free will, but we're still in charge. Okay. Don't destroy the place. That is what I really, really think is happening. And that's what everything points to. So these things we're seeing in the sky, they're not here to hurt us. They're not here to invade us. They're not here to abduct us. They're not here to do any of that stuff. They are here. It's the laser pointer to distract us. I think that people hate me for saying this, but I think that when Trump missed the pew pew, that was intervention as well, because that would have set us down a very terrible timeline. And then as soon as he got elected, that jumped us to another timeline. And then these entities had to intervene again because there was something about to happen. And they intervened, and now they're trying to guide us to this positive timeline. I think that when he avoided the pew pew, that got us off the Civil War timeline. And then this that's happening right now is getting us off the World War timeline. That's what I think. That's what I see. Let me know what you think and what you see. Have a beautiful day. Peace.
Very interesting perspective. I can completely understand how you can come to that connection for sure. Good old Texas. What is guns, y'all got respect. That is real impressive. But even more impressive flying. Now, what if this was a military demonstration? Who got these guns? They look like fireworks. Now, hypothetically, excuse me, what if all of this pow pow demonstration was just like in Iron Man when Tony was revealing how well the weapon systems work. I'm like, what? Yeah, let's just think on that. So right here.
What is in their hands is not simply once your phone is hacked. What is in their hands is not simply your device, it is your future. They're selling our future, they're selling our past, they are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power. The screen may be off as it's sitting on your desk, but the device is talking all of the time. The question we have to ask is, who is it talking to? If I get a smartphone and I need to use a phone, I actually open it up before I use it. Anything you can do on that device, the attacker, in this case the government, can do. Before 2013, if you said there's a system that's watching everything you do, the government is collecting records of every phone call in the United States, even for those people who are not suspected of any crime, it was a conspiracy. Yes, there were some people who believed it was happening. Yes, there were academics who could say this was technically possible. The world of 2013, some suspected that this was happening. The world after 2013, we know that it's happening. The distance between speculation and fact is everything in a democracy. We have now had the first European regulations that are trying to limit the amount of data that can be collected secretly and used against populations broadly. And we have also seen the basic structure of the internet itself change in response to this understanding that the network path that all of our communications cross, when you request a website, when you send a text message, when you read an email, for so long those communications have been electronically naked or unencrypted. Before 2013, more than half the world's internet communications were unencrypted. Now, far more than half are, measured by just web traffic from one of the world's leading browsers, the Google Chrome browser. The entire world has changed in the last few years. It hasn't gone far enough. The problems still exist. And in some ways, they've gotten worse. But we have made progress that would not have been possible if we didn't know what was going on. Hacking has increasingly become what governments consider a legitimate investigative tool. They use the same methods and techniques as criminal hackers. And what this means is they will try to remotely take over your device. Once they do this, by detecting a vulnerability in the software that your device runs, such as Apple's iOS or Microsoft Windows, they can craft a special kind of attack code called an exploit. They then launch this exploit at the vulnerability on your device, which allows them to take total control of that device. Anything you can do on that device, the attacker, in this case the government, can do. They can read your email, they can collect every document, they can look at your contact book, they can turn the location services on, they can see anything that is on that phone instantly and send it back home to the mothership. They can do the same with laptops. The other prong that we forget so frequently is that in many cases, they don't need to hack our devices. They can simply ask Google for a copy of our email box, because Google saves a copy of that. Everything that you ever typed into that search box, Google has a copy of. Every private message that you've sent on Facebook, every link that you've clicked, everything that you've liked, they keep a permanent record of. And all of these things are available not just to these companies, but to our governments, as they are increasingly deputized as sort of miniature arms of government.
What about enabling your microphone camera?
If you can do it, they can do it. It is trivial to remotely turn on your microphone or to activate your camera, so long as you have systems level access. If you had hacked someone's device remotely, anything they can do, you can do. They can look up your nose, right? They can record what's in the room. The screen may be off as it's sitting on your desk, but the device is talking all of the time. The question we have to ask is, who is it talking to? Even if your phone is not hacked, right now, you look at it, it's just sitting there on the charger. It is talking tens or hundreds or thousands of times a minute to any number of different companies who have apps installed on your phone. It looks like it's off, it looks like it's just sitting there, but it is constantly chattering. And unfortunately, like pollution, we have not created the tools that are necessary for ordinary people to be able to see this activity. And it is the invisibility of it that makes it so popular and common and attractive for these companies. Because if you do not realize they're collecting this data from you, this very private and personal data, there's no way you're going to object to it. Once your phone is hacked, what is in their hands is not simply your device, it is your future. But we see how these same technologies are being applied to create what they call the social credit system. If any of your activities online, if your purchases, if your associations, if your friends are in any way different from what the government or the powers that be of the moment would like them to be, you're no longer able to purchase train tickets. You're no longer able to board an airplane. You may not be able to get a passport. You may not be eligible for a job. You might not be able to work for the government. All of these things are increasingly being created and programmed and decided by algorithms. And those algorithms are fueled by precisely the innocent data that our devices are creating all of the time, constantly, invisibly, quietly, right now. Our devices are casting all of these records that we do not see being created, that in aggregate seem very innocent. You were at Starbucks at this time. You went to the hospital afterwards. You spent a long time at the hospital. After you left the hospital, you made a phone call. You made a phone call to your mother. You talked to her until the middle of the night. The hospital was an oncology clinic. Even if you can't see the content of these communications, the activity records, what the government calls metadata, which they argue they do not need a warrant to collect, tells the whole story. And these activity records are being created and shared and collected and intercepted constantly by companies and governments. And ultimately, it means as they sell these, as they trade these, as they make their businesses on the backs of these records, what they are selling is not information. What they are selling is us. They're selling our future. They're selling our past. They are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power and making our...
That puts a whole new perspective on digital slavery, huh? Said they're selling us.
Stories work for them. If I get a smartphone and I need to use a phone, I actually open it up before I use it. I perform a kind of surgery on it to physically desolder or sort of melt the metal connections that hold the microphone on the phone. And I physically take this off. I remove the camera for the phone, and then I close it back up. I seal it up. And then if I need to make a phone call, I will attach an external microphone on it. And this is just so if the phone is sitting there and I'm not making a call, it cannot hear me. Now, this is extreme. Most people do not need this. But for me, it's about being able to trust our technology. My phone could still be hacked. My laptop could still be hacked. And just as I told you before, the same principles applied to me. If it is hacked, they can do anything to the device that I can do. So my trust in technology is limited.
Trust me. Eric Snowden is damn near a national hero, bro. Even though a lot of people may not agree with that sentiment. But if not for him, we would not be aware of several things that have went wrong in this country, and even just like how he given real gems that are necessary in this time of society, and just how they keep secrets from us. I didn't do any of the press releases from what they've been saying about the drones, except for they don't know anything about it, which is crazy for it to be the United States government. So are you keeping secrets from us? Because clearly they have, and they've been doing it for years. But I'm about to go make some tea. Hiccups is killing me. Until next time, peace. Good God.
Press pause. Press pause. Take a thing. That's what I'm